Hi, guys. Welcome to the Creative Block. I'm Vince Gonzalez. Today, we're talking with Yossi Hasson, co founder of Metaversal. Metaversal is creator first focused, believing that Web3 will fundamentally change culture and our relationship with the world at large. They aim to connect consumers, artists, collectors, and builders with educational resources and insights. They are a decentralized community builder, providing investment, production support, and partnerships, all the while keeping an eye on current culture and emerging technology. So, Yossi, the few months ago, your co-founder Dan Schmerin was invited at the university at USC to speak on campus in front of blockchain at USC. I am a committee member of that organization. Um, he It was my first introduction into Metaversal. He's a very good speaker, a very good pitch man. He got me all juiced up and excited. And so I got really curious about what you guys were doing. Uh, Jillian's got me all dialed in with your badges. So I'm always looking forward to, collecting all your new badges. And I kind of feel like I'm part of the family already.
I
So,
love it. I love it.
um, so from that, I was just really excited to hear about what you guys are doing and what you were creating and what you think is going forward. Um, uh, so let me start with this. Imagine I'm a 70-year-old art patron. I wear turtlenecks. I like to go to opening receptions at the Guggenheim and drink free wine and little cubes of cheese. Uh, how do you explain to him what Metaversal is?
Yeah, it's a great question. You're a 70-year-old art patron. What is Metaversal? Well, we're effectively curators of the next iteration of art, on the next kind of space where art will live, where culture will live. We spend our lives in a digital medium. We spend more and more time every day in that medium, whether you like it or you don't. That is what is happening. And where culture is moving is that art that is created native to that medium is where digital expression is living, where people's expression is living. And that's what really art is. It's an expression of humanity. It's an expression of culture. It's an expression of what is happening in our lives today. So it makes sense that there is a native way for that to be represented in a digital world. And what we do at Metaversal, we are curators of culture. That's what we call ourselves. And we do that by investing in the creators, the artists, the change makers of this medium. We invest in the infrastructure that makes it more available to a wider group of people, because right now there's still a lot of technical complexity around what is a blockchain, NFT, wallet, all of that type of stuff. And we want to invest in the tools that make this much, much simpler for people to be able to be onboarded into this ecosystem.
Cool.
And we also have a studio that works with producers, creators, and new IP to be able to bring that out to the world in this new medium. And the wrapping of those three things is what Metaversal is to that 70-year-old collector.
That's cool. I appreciate that. What's a little bit of background on you? Like, how where from where you started? Obviously, you guys are very deep into Web3 now, and whatever iteration that is
Yep.
going forward. What attracted you to this space?
Yeah, well, my kind of origin story is I was born and raised in South Africa. I saw firsthand growing up there what a high inflationary environment looks like, what it looks like when the currency of your country can change, the value of it can change overnight. One day you think it's worth X, the next day it's literally worth half of that, and you have no control over that. So I grew up in that backdrop. And then I also grew up in the backdrop of people like Bill Gates, Michael Dell, not going to college, starting the tech revolution with PCs and computers, and very much said that that's the world that I want to plug into and be part of. So I got obsessed with computers from a very young age. I started a open source technology company. And built that over an 11-year period. And it was there that I learned about Bitcoin from our engineers. And at that time, it was in early 2011. At that time, I saw it as this new way to have money that wasn't dependent on a government. It wasn't dependent on a central bank. And it was built on top of open source software, which I loved. And coming with that backdrop of seeing currency change overnight and that you can't really put your trust in the government in how that currency gets managed, it was an immediate aha that, wow, there's something special happening over here that's really interesting. Move forward a number of years, and blockchain and the world of crypto has really evolved into the space where, for the first time, we have this ability to become digital owners of our assets, digital owners of the footprints and the time that we spent online. And if you think about the way technology has played out, we're really renters of our time online. The information that we provide, it's our information, our photos, our emails, our work, everything that we do, we're effectively giving to these companies and saying, you hold on to it for us, you're going to charge us to have access to it, and you're going to serve us ads at the base of this, and you may decide at any point in time to shut us off this entire ecosystem. And when you do get shut off this ecosystem, now that has real effects on your life in ways that weren't understood maybe 10 years ago when these systems were built. So what got me into Web3? It's this idea that that is not the way the status quo should be, that creators should be empowered to own their digital assets, that they should be rewarded for the work that they do, and that these big, we call them the big tech titans, should not be the monopolistic powers that control our digital lives, because our digital lives are becoming our lives. And that giving up that control to someone we didn't elect, we didn't vote for, there is no kind of democracy around who has control over these systems, etc., is not the status quo that we see a future, or that I want to be a part of a future. And this is what this movement represents for me in the world of Web3, and why I got into it, and why I invest in it, and why we spend all of the time doing what we do at Metaversal, because we think it's extremely important to change that status quo and the power balance that exists today.
That's incredible. And, even imagining the agreements that we all click on quickly, every time there's a new app or something like that. I mean, I don't know anybody who understands those agreements completely, and we just sort of have this blind faith that everything's going to be okay. But in the back of our minds, we know that we're being used. So it's fascinating. That is, I guess, the big hope of blockchain, in that, we would have more control of our assets as we put them out, right?
Yeah, and our digital identity and our digital lives. And you said we're being used. Even the terminology within technology, you are a user. The only other place that I hear someone being called a user is if you are being sold drugs. And that is how the tech world sees us today. We are users on their networks. But these are actually huge rights for individuals. If you take away messaging, take away Twitter as an example, as a protocol, and who gets to decide who's on Twitter, who says what, and who's allowed to have that platform, it's no longer just something that a single individual at a company should be able to decide. Right. That should be in much wider distribution of who has a say in that town space. That is our town space. We saw with Facebook what happens when elections can get taken over by algorithms, etc. So it's no longer just, this is a potential future that we're seeing. We're seeing in real time how these decisions that we made, because we didn't really understand it. We didn't know that these were going to become the powerful forces that we have in our world. So we were happy to give away that right for convenience. And now we're seeing that that has gone too far, and that we need to change that status quo. And that the individual, the creator, the musicians, the artists, the digital designers, etc., they've been getting a raw deal this entire time. And that status quo needs to change. They need to stop being users, and we need to turn into becoming owners in our own networks that we build. Both as a collector, I want to be able to own the art that you are creating, and the work, and be a participant and vote with my dollars and say, here we go, I'm going to buy that. As the 70-year-old collector buys something on their wall, they're an owner of that piece of art now, and they're saying something with it. I want to move away from being a renter. And me as the creator, I want to be able to have that distribution directly to that individual. I want to be able to own that pathway and the monetary rewards that come out of it, not necessarily some studio that owns my IP and can dictate who does what, when, and how, and everything along that. So that status quo is what we really want to change, and really what Web3 represents as a movement to be able to do that.
And it's exciting. It's what got me interested as a content creator, this idea of, ownership, or being able to decide if something sells, where the funds go, how much, all of that was really sort of the exciting draw for me. That's kind of the thread that I pulled, when I was first started looking at all of this. So it's exciting. And
it is.
What do you in at Metaversal now? Like, what are good examples of clients that are in play right now that you guys are excited about?
Yeah, we've got a couple of initiatives and clients, and we are a broad collector of NFT art and of NFT productions. So we're large in the generative art space. So for your listeners who are excited about that new medium and do come from that background, we think generative art as a category is going to be the next big cultural art space. Like what pop art did for the world, generative art is that next space. And we see that even in the current market, we've seen that there's kind of been a big shift in the speculative nature of this market. We saw prices going for, selling a Bored Ape for $500,000. Now it's sitting at somewhere around $70,000, $80,000, and a lot of the speculators have come out of the industry. But what has held is generative art. The creators and the artists who are really doing some trailblazing work in what they're producing there, those are being seen as the grails. And it's still a very early industry, so it's hard to say what will be in a grail in 10 years' time. But there's starting to be pockets showing that this is something that plays testament to the technology that is being built and is a new medium that is being discovered. Bring in AI into that and generative art, and there's a whole world that's being built out that we were very excited about. And for that, we launched an institution called The Random. It's a generative art focused institution. We brought our first analyst who joined our company, Jan Kopens, is heading that up and leading that charge. And we raised $10 million to go out and collect the grails of the industry. And we did that in a unique way where we're not a fund. We don't have a 7-year sales cycle or 8 years or 9 years or 10 years. We see this as a permanent collection that we are going to hold and showcase and activate in the world. So that's one area that we work hard. You mentioned the badges. The badges is a product of ours that is a way to bring people into the Web3 ecosystem and build community members with Metaversal and educate about all the things that are happening in this industry. What happens on a week-to-week basis? Who are the generative artists that are creating amazing work? Which are the projects that are doing trailblazing things? How do you think about this industry? And what's both the highs and lows that are happening in real time? And we commemorate that each week with an NFT, with a badge that you can collect. It's free and gives you a snapshot every week of what is happening in this industry and gets you onto the pulse of what's happening on a day-to-day basis. So those are kind of two areas within the business that we're working on. We have a new product that we're about to launch, which I'll maybe tell you a little bit about a little bit later. But those are areas of excitement.
That's incredible. That's really exciting. It makes me want to understand more about the generative art. The people from the outside, the naysayers, people that have a lot of fear about all of that and how it's created. This question of, is it art? Who owns it? Who has the IP? All of these things are coming up. Do you guys discuss that much in-house or?
Yeah, for sure. It's a question that we discuss often, and where we normally end up is that well, history may not repeat, it rhymes. If you look at every new medium that has ever come out, there's always been these questions. When we went from black and white photography to color photography, it was like, well, is this real art? Is this something that we should do? When we went from no sound in pictures in movies to now sound being included into them, that was a whole controversy and conversation. So every time there is something that challenges the status quo, it's met by some people who are leaning into it and like, this is the future, and there are people who are, wow, this is not art, this is not what this movement is about. And the way we think about it is that the IP will change. We call it Web3 native IP. And Web3 native IP is something different to non-native IP. It comes with a kind of ethos that is wrapped around that phrase. And that ethos is that it's open, it is distributed, which means that multiple people can own it or have a claim to it. It comes with ownership. And sometimes that can be full commercial ownership. It could be partial commercial ownership. It could also be no ownership. And often it means that it is built in an open and transparent way. So it comes with these different wrappers that someone as a creator, as an artist, Maybe you're in the traditional world, you're a musician from the traditional kind of non-Web3 native IP. It's very difficult for someone to understand or to be able to come into those principles and say, okay, I'm going to give up ownership of something that I've created and make that now available to a group of other people. That's a big shift. It's a big leap to be able to go with. And not everyone can make that transition. And there are kind of steps along that way. It doesn't have to be black or white. It doesn't have to be on one end of the spectrum or on the other. The full Web3 native IP, if I were to go to that end of the spectrum, we're talking about things like CC0, which means as soon as I release it's in the public domain and now I don't own it, no one owns it, it's now available to anyone. And we've seen projects like Nouns go into that direction. And we were one of the first holders of a Noun. We bought Noun number 9. And that's a completely new model of how do you build community and IP where the ownership of that is in the public domain. And something that hasn't been seen being done before and being done in a real-time basis. Here we're almost over a year into the Nouns experiment, and they have a treasury of over $40 million from people buying into Nouns every single day that they're now using to decide what to do in how we build out the story of Nouns and this IP in a completely new and novel way.
Wow.
So that's on the end of the extreme. A little bit before that, you've got Bored Ape Yacht Club who've come out and said you have full commercial rights to the PFP that you hold, to the NFT that you hold. You can do whatever you want with it. You have the rights to do that. You don't have to talk to us to be able to do anything. We've seen people open up restaurant chains, clothing lines, beer products, etc., through that distributed ownership on the IP. So that's how we think about Web3 native IP. And it comes with that wrapper of being more open, more decentralized, and more transparent in how you build when using this type of IP.
And hopefully is still supportive of the person that originated it.
100%. It's still supportive of the person who originated it. If you think of Bored Apes, Yuga Labs is the company behind it. They're a multi-billion-dollar business. By opening up their IP and creating it, you had 10,000 people who bought these Bored Apes and had commercial rights to it. You had 10,000 ambassadors who are talking about the story of Bored Apes and thinking of new and novel ways to take that IP and commercialize it and bring it to the market. So they are huge benefactors of this opening up of the IP. Also embedded into that, they were earning a royalty on every resale of the asset, which is new in this industry. The traditional art world, generally you're not earning any royalties on secondary sales. And I don't have the exact numbers, but it's in the probably $100 million range that they earn just on secondary sales in the Bored Ape Yacht Club ecosystem. Now they're the outlier, they're the biggest success, but it shows you what's possible when you are taking this Web3 native IP idea and saying, what does it look like to build something where I don't control everything? I'm not the only one who gets a say, and every time someone wants to use it, you have to pay me a license fee, and this is how it works, and a very different model.
Yeah, that's crazy exciting. That's really funny. And talk about your partnership with Daniel. How did that happen?
Yeah. So partnership with Daniel happened through one of our co-investors, Coin Fund. Originally, the kind of genesis of Metaversal started through Coin Fund coming on as a partner. Coin Fund have known Dan for a long time, known me for a long time, and brought the two of us together. He came from the traditional art world. Was a CEO of a company called Wovo. And the penny drop for him when he tells the story is he would walk the halls of this big storage company and would see some of the most cultural artifacts, the most iconic cultural artifacts of our time sitting in storage. And that 96% of all the world's art sits in storage. No one gets to enjoy it. No one gets to see it. And the stories and lessons that come from it are not being taught because they're sitting here locked away. And he wanted to see, was there a way to unlock that with NFTs, to be able to bring that out? And I came at it from a technology level and saw the combination of these two things, the kind of deep experience in the art world and domain and the technology, those two things together, thinks we can create something very unique and powerful in the world of Metaversal. And that's what brought us together.
That's exciting. That's exciting. And what about your other clients? Do you guys have discussions with like, for example, like I always say that Warhol would have been just like out of his mind right now if he was alive right now, right? This, I could see him just being completely excited about all of this. Um, with somebody like Warhol's estate and things like that, do you have conversations with those types of known IPs?
Yeah, we have had conversations with known IP, big foundations, big holders of IP, and are looking at how can they unlock that IP effectively. What can they do to bring that IP to market? And we did see a big wave of that coming into the market from traditional IP holders figuring out ways to introduce NFTs into the IP that they hold. And some of them did that well. Some of them did that with a little bit more challenged in how they did that. And I think where the market is today still is that Web3 native IP, where the community exists, is that they're looking for new native IP to enter the market. And I think what will happen over time as the market expands and as more and more people grow into the market, we'll see a space for traditional IP to start entering into the Web3 space. We're starting to already see experiments of that. We're seeing Nike really leading the charge as a brand in how they are doing that, and they literally recently just did a drop where you could buy some Nike sneakers, the kind of Air Force Ones, that IP that is sitting latent on their balance sheet have managed to figure out a Web3 native way of bringing that to life. But they've done that very, very well in catering to the audience of who is the NFT buyer today. And that is someone who is far more excited about new emerging ways to use this than potentially getting a Warhol that they now have access to. But that will change. Over time, I think that constituency will change, and you'll see more of this traditional Web 2 stuff coming in, and a bigger audience of buyers for that.
And including lifestyle brands too, right? Like you could imagine Gucci and Dolce and all these guys also jumping on board with that.
Yeah, and they are. Lifestyle brands are definitely at the pulse of culture and at the pulse of what is happening and want to be seen as innovators in this. And also, ultimately, what is a lifestyle brand? It's the ultimate flex. And if we're spending all of our time online and you want to have the ultimate flex, you want to own the brands that are that ultimate flex and equivalent in the online space as well.
Mm-hmm. That's incredible. And thinking about lifestyle brands, how do you guys look at culture and where market attention is? Do you guys, I would imagine this is like a daily practice for you guys, right? Because it sort of is the end all be all in terms of what people are leaning into. How do you approach that in-house?
Yeah, it's a great question. And if you think about our business, we have two components to it. We have this investment function. We have 6 analysts who are sitting in Discord channels, checking the market, seeing what's trending, bringing a lot of that quantitative data to the table of this is where the trends are. And then we have the studio, this production studio, which works with creatives and designers and a very different type of individual thinking on how do we create these new immersive experiences. And when you bring those two things together, it gives you a very, very close ear to the ground of where is the trends, what is happening on the ground, who are the trailblazers in the space, and where should we be paying far more attention and investing, and also how does that impact what we produce. So an example of how that played out, or maybe to give you something more tangible, we on the investment side started tracking this world of Bitcoin ordinals. And what Bitcoin ordinals is for the first time, there is a mechanism to be able to write data to the Bitcoin blockchain, what they call it inscribing, and it's effectively creating an NFT on the Bitcoin network. So now you've got this Bitcoin network with tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people that are on Bitcoin, and for the first time you can now bring culture onto this network. You can bring art, you can bring music, someone embedded a game onto the Bitcoin network, and now you have this layer that exists on top of the Bitcoin network. Now we discovered that and learnt about that from an investment lens. Should we be buying some of these ordinals? Should we be investing in this space? What is happening from a trend basis? How many inscriptions are being written? But then we took that and said, okay, something really interesting is happening here at the edge of culture in this network. what can we do as a project to be able to build on top of that. I can't reveal it yet because it's still under wraps, but we're working on a very, very interesting project that we'll be bringing to life on top of that. And that insight came in from the investment side, being close to the ground, and then playing into the studio to say there is something really interesting that we should be doing here, and be a trailblazer in this space, because this is where the puck is going. This is where the cultural trends are happening.
That's incredible. And do you guys ever like come across like individuals, for example, that present something, or small groups that, you know, are not on the horizon line, but is just so interesting and out there that it kind of makes you guys pay attention?
Definitely. I mean, that's what happens almost every day.
Oh, cool.
That's where the biggest innovations happen and the most exciting stuff happens. A story that we share is on the generative art side, that a new platform emerged called FX Hash about a year and a half ago. And that was built on the Tezos chain. And that's not necessarily important, but basically it was a space where people could experiment with generative art at a much lower cost than what it would have been done to be able to do it on Ethereum. And because of that, you had really interesting new creators who were undiscovered, who no one knew, experimenting and creating really cool stuff on this new platform. So what we did as a firm is we leaned into that, and we got to know all the artists, got to know all the creators, collected all of those Genesis pieces, and really went heavily into that, because that's where new discovery, that's where the cultural changes happen. It's very much in that place of experimentation. It's very much in that place of new people trying new art forms, and they don't have some kind of legacy to protect. So ultimately, that's where the trailblazers live, and where we need to spend most of our time.
Wow. That's pretty exciting. Yeah, it's so exciting because it's all of this stuff that, you know, it seems like every day there's something that pops up that, you know, it's like, I never saw that before. I never saw that before. You know, it's like, I find myself saying that way more frequently than I did even 10 years ago, you know? So just when you think you saw it all, there's like, just, you know,
The next thing.
the next thing, open your laptop, you know, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
You know, tech is changing pretty fast. You know, you think about AR and VR and blockchain, the metaverse. I mean, even at some level, you could even throw 3D printing in there. And yet I seem, part of me making this show is to help people understand like what's happening. I educate myself. Hopefully I educate people around me. We're very far from like mass adoption on many of these things. How do you think that transition looks?
Yeah. Going back to history doesn't necessarily repeat, it rhymes.
Yeah.
If I think of my time on the internet, I started with a dial-up modem, and the time it used to take to come online, the experience was pretty rudimentary. And I think in my lifetime, where we've gone from a dial-up modem where everything was text-based, to now I can call a cab from my phone anywhere in the world in a couple of minutes, and I'm upset if it's more than 5 minutes. That's the shift that has happened in our lives, and that has happened at an exponential pace. And this idea of exponentiality is very difficult for us to understand as human beings, because we think linearly. We age linearly, not exponentially.
Right.
And when we think mass adoption hasn't happened yet, that's true. We haven't got mass adoption yet, but it is growing exponentially. So if I am sitting today thinking, well, what does this mean for me? What does it mean for my business? What does it mean for me as a creator? Oh, well, mass adoption hasn't happened yet. I don't need to worry about this now. It's the opposite, because this happens very gradually, and then suddenly. Let's use AI as an example. AI was something that people spoke about for many, many years, and was like, okay, there's this thing called AI. One day it's coming. And then all of a sudden, everyone's on ChatGPT. They have 100 million users. People are saying that they're going to lose their jobs, and you're now incorporating it into your workflow. And that switch happened overnight.
So fast.
Now, so fast. And it's accelerating. So if I'm a creator today, the challenge is there is so much happening. But the kind of job that I have as an individual is to be open and learning and exploring. Because if you're doing that, you're able to then at least see, how does this impact how could this impact what you're doing in your day to day, and how can I embrace this technological shift and lean into it. and be at the cusp of it, because that also brings and opens up huge opportunities. And before you know it, we're going to be at that exponential curve, and mass market would have arrived. And if you haven't embraced it, you're now going to be very late. You're going to be very behind in being able to now understand how to embrace this as a medium. People who are on TikTok today, someone who is a big Instagrammer isn't necessarily translated into becoming a successful TikToker, because it's a different medium, and you had to embrace it when you were experimenting in the beginning.
Right.
It's very hard now to be able to enter that, and that just needs to be the way that you think about all these new platforms: is open, experiment, embrace, and learn.
Yeah. And I think it's using our 70-year-old art patron as an example. When he shows up to his next gallery and his ticket is on his phone and he doesn't know it's an NFT, his access is connected to his wallet, but he doesn't know that, doesn't care, and yet he's going to use it in his day-to-day.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. He's going to use it in his day-to-day and hopefully receive the benefits of that experience, which is ultimately what we want. Taking it back to the beginning of our conversation, we want to see that experience be that 70-year-old patron is now an owner of that ticket, now can get the benefits of that access that they're getting, can decide whether he wants to sell that ticket on and has the rights to be able to do that, can be able to have that control in those choices, which right now he doesn't have in the way that the kind of tech platforms have been built. And that may not be important to him today. He doesn't even think that that's something that he should have. But we're very strong believers that that is the way that these products should be consumed. That is the way that we should have ownership of these digital landscapes, and that status quo needs to change. Anything else that I would say is, if you are an emerging creator and artist in the space, or you are experimenting with Web3, please do reach out to us. We have multiple ways of bringing people into this ecosystem, and would love to hear people's story and see where there is opportunity to collaborate. And that it isn't as scary as it sounds. That very much it is, that there is a warm, welcoming community that is out here, and that is working with some really incredible and exceptional people on a day-to-day basis. And I don't know any other industries where you have access to the people at the pinnacle of it from people who are just joining. And that's the space that you're entering into. And there's incredibly exciting things that can be created when that access is available.
That's amazing. It's exciting to watch a company like yours being built that curates artists and gives them platform. It's pretty fantastic. It's really fun to watch. And so there's the artist end of it, but there's people just reading your blogs and things like that. Where can they go and support and follow and watch what you're doing?
Yeah, you can go to our website, metaversal.gg. You can also follow us on Twitter, Hello Metaversal. You can subscribe to our weekly newsletter called The Metaversalist. That's where you collect our badges.
Get your badges.
And get your badges. Good things, we say good things come to those who collect.
Yes.
So become a collector every week. And through those three channels, you'll learn a lot about what we're doing and be able to access us as well. And please reach out to us so we can engage and bring you into our community and work with you.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Yossi, I really, really, really appreciate your time. I was really excited to, make this happen and talk to you guys a little deeper. So I'm very grateful for your time today.
Likewise, Vince, appreciate all that you do.
Take care. Take care.
Oh, yeah.